Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Gold Mine, episode 2 now. Very excited. We got an awesome guest here. Neil is going to be talking to us about some pretty wicked stuff. But before we get into anything, make sure you are all liking the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff so that you get your emails when we go live, which is going to be Wednesdays from now on. And I am excited to kick this off. Neil, why don't you give us a quick blurb, 10 to 15 seconds, who you are, where you come from, all that good stuff.
Sure. I'm a Londoner, so London, England. Former TV producer, reformed TV producer turned app developer. And I've just launched the men's mental health app, Mettle, which is the kind of first mental health toolkit for men.
That's fantastic. And we're going to get into that in a little bit for sure. Shaun, you got any thoughts or points before we jump into this?
Yeah, I don't mind getting into it now just a little bit. Neil, I got a question for you because I've got a bit of a background in IT. I used to be a computer system engineer when I left Tier 1. I cracked open the books and thought I'd get nerdy. What's your background in app development?
Zero.
Oh, right. Congratulations.
Absolutely none.
I bet that was fun.
Yeah, so that's my answer. Nothing. I can barely
Right.
send an email. Sure.
Right.
I'm a kind of like complete, Luddite, I think, as they would say in the UK. Now I know that you're from actually Barnsley, England.
That's right.
It's a very different perspective on it. We were just chatting before the show, weren't we, about Barnsley is one of the properly tough places of England.
Proper tough.
It's
proper tough.
Working down the pit during the day, fighting at night. That's kind of it. On no money. That's
Indeed.
Barnsley, yeah. Would you say that's fair? With a thick accent?
That's fair. It's fair.
I don't want to typecast everyone.
Not too much generalization, but I think that's fair.
Yeah, listen. I have no background in tech whatsoever. My background. I'm a TV producer by trade. I ran, some of the biggest TV production companies in the UK. Overseeing shows that you probably won't have heard of, but like The Apprentice, the UK Apprentice, which is still one of the biggest shows out here. And I just one day got up and thought, I've got to be of service, as you put it, Chance. And my life changed, and I decided, right, okay, well, I've got to go and help some guys. And my motto in life, I think, is find the others, which was a Timothy Leary quote originally: "Do the unexpected, find the others." And I just had to go out and find the others who could join me on a mission and could bring those kind of tech skills in order to, bring something to life that we felt was sorely missing, which was, mental health support, or mental fitness support, as we call it, for men in the app space.
Fantastic. I love
it. Where did the idea for an app come into it? Because, I mean, there's lots of other realms in which you can get into mental health support, stuff like that, like podcasting or anything else. But to come up with the app, where did that come from?
Yeah, so as I say, my background is television. Yeah, so I'm a communicator. I'm used to working in a kind of visual medium, and I knew that there, I could see that there was there's a male mental health crisis going on. Suicide is the biggest killer of men under 50 in the UK, according to the UK government. That's a terrible, terrible statistic. I could see in my mates that, when I spoke to them about some of the tools that I was using, meditation, breathwork, self-hypnosis, which really helped me, they kind of, as I always say, stared into their pints and wanted to know what time the football was on. It was kind of taboo subject. And that vulnerability that I was seeing in my mates was reflected in the male mental health crisis, where, there's a big message out there: men need to talk, and that's completely right. We need to get better at that. But in the meantime, while we're changing, I wanted to provide people with some really useful tools that they could look after their own mental health without necessarily needing to take that step into talking. And I wanted to kind of reduce those kind of barriers to entry, to take away some of the vulnerability that men felt about using some of the products in the market, which they saw as too female, too hippie-ish, and that there was nothing wrong with them. We're talking about 20,000 wellness apps out there on the market, not a single one for men. I think there's 2 or 3 now since we started, and that's it. And it was kind of like, I've made TV shows before which kind of tackled difficult issues, maybe about homelessness, disability, gender, things like that, and made them. I've always kind of tried to put a really popular spin. So I did a show recently about homelessness, but I took a survival guy called Ed Stafford, who's on Discovery. He made a show called Naked and Marooned and then it was called Marooned. It was 60 days and 60 nights on a desert island with nothing but his camera. And I said to him, Ed, you're ex-military, adopted, suffered mental health problems, and male, all risk factors for ending up on the streets. Why don't we do your survival show, but rather than do it on a desert island, we'll do it on the streets of London, Manchester, and Glasgow over a British winter. And that was like Channel 4, like one of our big channels, highest rating show, new series for 5 years. We brought a big audience to homelessness. And so that's kind of what I've specialized in my career, in kind of like taking important but potentially off-putting subject matters and putting a bit of an entertaining spin on them and bringing them to a wide audience. And I realized that TV wasn't going to cut it for giving men the practical tools that they need to look after their mental health. And the best solution seemed to be an app. I think, my motto was kind of, and is, I suppose, that in this respect, that transformation beats information for us. I think there's a hell of a lot of information out there for men in the manosphere, or whatever you might want to call it, which is really great. And I lap it up from my Hubermans to my Rogans to, all the rest of it. Yeah. But I think we've been lacking in transformation. Yeah, it's a lot of information, but what about just practical tools where I can just listen to something, it gives me some breathwork instructions, and 2 minutes later I can have changed my physiological state. And that's sort of what I wanted to provide. And an app seemed like the only sensible way of doing it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings up the thought of it gives people the opportunity to do it themselves.
Yeah,
away from prying eyes, right? I know a lot of guys
absolutely.
didn't want to go see therapy because they'd have to walk into a therapist's office, right? And then somebody might see me and but
absolutely,
that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, so my personal experience, the tools that I've included in this app, or we've included, meditation, breathwork, self-hypnosis. Meditation really helped me. I had I have a condition of the nervous system called benign intention tremor, which makes me shake. By the time I was 11 years old, I couldn't get a teaspoon of sugar into a cup of tea, and I was prescribed meditation because it was the only thing anybody had heard of that might work, and it did work for me, and it stopped me shaking. And I had depression in my 20s, and I was cured of that through clinical hypnotism. But actually, just to your point, Chance, it's hard as a guy to talk about. I find it hard. I still do, yeah. Even though I've become like a kind of like spokesperson for mental health, here I am talking about it. I still don't actually want to go down the pub on a Friday night and talk to my mates about my mental health. Yeah, it's just I'd rather talk about the football, and that's just the way I am. Yeah, and and I want to improve, but it's difficult. I am improving, but to give you an example, about therapy and stuff, and that's all great, but that's quite a hard step for a lot of people to take. I remember when I had depression, to going to see the doctor, it took all the strength I had to go and see the doctor eventually, after a long time. And I went in to see the doctor, and actually they said, "Oh, sorry, you're in the wrong place. You need to go over the road to occupational health," or whatever it is. And of course, I never went over the road. I just went straight to the bar and stayed there. So it's kind of like, we just wanted to give men tools that are just really easy for them to use. Yeah, and you don't need to be. It's not about being mentally unwell or struggling. It's about, these are tools for everyone that can just keep you in good shape. Yeah. So they're aspirational tools. They help you focus better, have more confidence, more energy, but also they help you beat anxiety and stress and sleep better. And so, all kind of good things that help you not just go from bad to good, but from good to great. And I think that's kind of what we wanted to do. And that's kind of, I think, our slogan is, be better, be Mettle. And it's about being better. It's a continuous journey. It's not like fix yourself and then you're done. It's like, this is a long journey. And our name Mettle, it's Mettle, rather than metal, the kind of material. And to test your metal, test of your metal. Your metal is your ability to cope with difficulties, your spirit and resilience. And that's kind of what we want to encapsulate in the app.
Absolutely. Shaun, you got any thoughts on this?
I do. I find it interesting that, and I understand exactly what you're saying, Neil. You can go down to the pub, you can sit with friends, and no one will
Yeah.
talk about mental health,
No.
but they'll feel super comfortable with pulling out their phone, and everyone at that table could be doing the Mettle app. Every
Yeah.
single guy could be on
Yeah.
Mettle
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
getting their Mettle on at their
That's right.
table, and they'd be comfortable with that, but not
Yeah.
putting the phone down and looking each other in the eye and being Mettle. And so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
consider these kind of things as like a transitionary or a bridge head,
Absolutely.
where you got to take the beach with an app, and then once the beachhead is established, you can go out and punch into the country called all of our mental health.
Yeah.
I see it
Sure.
as a good transitionary tool for sure.
I think you are. That is a beautiful way of putting it. Taking the beach. So, this starts as an app, but ultimately we want to become a movement, like many
Of
people
course,
do.
of course.
And we're going to build a community, and those things will come. But to start with, you just got to get people. You got to put the tools into people's hands that can help them in the first instance, and then hopefully they get comfortable. But and as you say, had the other day of bunch of guys getting out the Mettle app in a jiu-jitsu gym, and it's kind of like, that's great, and they're all discussing it, and that's great. So we wanted to create a product that made them feel comfortable, where that it was quite a cool product. So Bear Grylls is my co-founder. The adventurer, the
Right,
TV
right, right.
adventurer. And he's kind of got a great profile. We've got another guy, Dr. Alex George, who's really well known in the UK, and the people you're like, okay, well, they're quite cool guys. I feel okay using this product. And it's easy to
Is
use. There's
Isn't
no,
that
we just,
funny though? Isn't
yeah,
that funny? So this is the second time we've done the gold mine.
yeah,
So this is a new podcast this year. Last year we did 365 live
yes,
chat podcasts every
brilliant,
single day with the
love Shaun.
collective. So, the freak train left the train station in 2023, and here we are in 2024 with now 2 podcasts. So you're the second episode of the
Yeah,
gold mine. The
well,
first
very honoured.
episode,
Thank you.
dude, we're honored. Come on, don't even. So,
Charmer.
so
Barnsley
first,
charm. It's that northern charm.
that's right. You'll be buying me a pint in a minute. So, the first episode we did with 2 fellas from the United States,
Yeah,
and their company, or their movement, more correctly, is called Few Will Hunt. And so,
fuel.
about 6, 7 years ago, they started a
Amazing.
movement. Yeah, and they were just tired of what they saw, the world not working hard enough to do better. They kind of, the people around them had lost interest in improvement, betterment. And
Yeah,
so just a couple of regular dudes decided to do something about it. So they kind of started an apparel company. They worked hard. Many years later, they've now got a database of over 100,000 people who are now part of their movement called Few Will Hunt. And
mm,
so I just see it as a couple of regular dudes who got tired of what they saw and decided to put their nose to the grindstone. And years later, they've got a movement. They never
yeah,
saw that movement in the past, but they're seeing it now in the present, just like you. The irony is that you're them, except they got a head start on you, in
yeah,
the sense of
exactly.
creating a movement. And this is
Yeah,
only episode 2. So I
yeah,
love the coincidence of, the scale of where they're at versus the scale of where you're at, but it's the same. It's just, now
yeah.
it's just timeline for you to see the, not success, but see the results that are going to really move the needle. So it's inevitable. I think it's cool.
Great. Well, thanks, Shaun.
It is now. I got some videos here, and we got some quick little clips, stuff like that we're going to discuss just in general from our own experience. The first one up, I actually have from one of your countrymen, Mark Ormrod, and
Mm,
who's awesome. He's been on the show a couple times. I got to get him back on
Love
because
that
it's been
guy.
too long. Um, but so I'm going to throw a clip up here. We're going to watch it, and then we will discuss it from there. So give me 1 second here. Let's hit this up.
I have to take
Bang.
personal responsibility for my situation. Everything that I've done in my life right now has brought me here to this moment, right? And I need to take myself out of it and change things myself and start working on yourself.
So I think this is like, I brought this up first because I think this is key, and it goes to the point you made with Mettle in general is that it starts with you.
That's right.
What are your thoughts on that?
So I would say, like we were talking today, what are we really offering? And I think, what we're offering is a chance to change your life in a few minutes a day. I think that's kind of that's what our central promise, change your life in a few minutes a day. Yeah. It starts with you. Yeah. So here are the tools. Yeah. Give it a few minutes a day, build a practice, transform your state. We're transformational rather than informational, as I say, so you do a bit of breath work. So I wake up every morning, I feel, pretty sluggish. I do some breath work, I feel much more energized. Yeah, it's kind of like, I'm running an app business. Yeah, it's got like big financial demands. It's stressful. Yeah, that's kind of the nature of a startup. So I wake up, I've got 100 things running through my mind. I do some of the meditation on our app, and my mind's clearer. I feel better. I feel ready to start the day. Then I hop in a cold shower, and I'm ready to go. So I'm working on myself. So in a way, I built an app for myself. I guess it's quite selfish because I've got all the investors to pay for it. But it's kind of it's kind of stuff that I'm using, and I feel that it starts with you. You work on yourself. I say, yeah, absolutely. What do you guys think?
Shaun, what are you thinking?
Well, I think we built a podcast called The Collective for Chance Burles and me and everyone
Yes.
like us.
Yes.
And on the daily, we custom crafted the direction based on the needs as we saw it evolving in front of our noses on a daily. And so how we started and how we finished 2023 was radically different. And it's
Yeah.
because we weren't dogmatic about what we were doing. We knew there was a need. And so we just got to work. And the work evolved the product or the process or the outcome.
Yeah.
And so I would say that Chance, it's helped Chance a lot, but it's also helped me a lot. And I didn't think I needed much help. But what it did do is last year we talked to over 250 guests from around the world and large and in charge human behavioral scientists and CEOs and whatever, all of the things. And every single day, I'd have to reprocess what we just talked about. So we'd record it live, and then I obligated myself every day to rewatch it later that night as a review and grit my teeth as I listened to myself talk. And so what I found almost on a weekly basis, I was getting firmware updates, whether I liked it or not. Like me, myself, my consciousness, my physiology, my emotional, my mental was getting an upgrade every single week. I was a better human being every single week.
Yeah.
And it was through the generosity of our guests that we had and listening to their wisdom that I've evolved. But that was a forced process because I didn't have to attend. I put myself in the seat and sat there every single day in front of a microphone, whether I liked it or not.
Yeah.
But it's an obligation that I obligated myself to do. So it wasn't like, you know what, I'm going to tune into an app today. What I did say to myself was, guaranteed I'm going to be there again tomorrow morning recording that podcast. And so the difference between having an app in your hand and an obligation in your mind, that distance between the hand and the mind is where things fall apart. That's where the wheels come off the bus. You're definitely in the game because
I'm in the
it's your
game.
baby.
Yeah, that's right.
But now you've got your buddies at the pub and it's Friday evening and there's a good soccer game on and you just know that all of them would benefit from it. But the gap between their mind and their app is 100 miles. Whereas for you, it's only 2 inches because you understand the benefit, you understand the relevance, you understand the improvements that it creates for you. So I guess listening to what Mark just said, and by the way, shout out to Mark Ormrod, and I believe that was the episode where he fell out of his chair. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
No, I know what that
What's
was,
up,
yeah.
Mark? So, to Mark's point, I believe could maybe just play that clip again because I want to highlight his precise words, if you could, Chance, so I can
Give me 2
finalize my
seconds. I got to
comment.
re-upload it, but yes, I will get it up in 2
Okay,
seconds.
sorry. I think what Mark is proposing precisely in his wording, at least as I listened to it, was can you pull up that clip?
Yep, I got it right here.
Thanks.
Here we go.
I have to take personal responsibility for my situation. Everything that I've done in my life right now has brought me here to this moment, right? And I need to take myself out of it and change things myself and start working on yourself.
And so Mark's point, as he made that right at that moment, was a while ago. Like, how long ago was that? What, half a year ago?
Yeah, I'd
Course
say
be-
7
half
months.
a year ago?
Yeah, something like that.
And what is he doing today? Like, since the start of this year, he's really turned up the screws. Like, Mark has really added more velocity to his own personal initiatives, his own personal seeking, his own interaction with others. Now he's trying to not build his brand, but build himself into something that is making a greater impact. So Mark has always been an impactful dude, but now he's really striving to own it. Like, from an external perspective, and I stay in touch with Mark from time to time, he's really, really making an effort to expand his impact, not his influence, but his impact as an inspiring dude. And so when he was saying those words half a year ago, I'm not sure how much he 100% believed what he was saying. But I do know now, having watched him just over the last couple of months, that dude is like, he doubled down all in. And so I've really seen a difference between his words from half a year ago to his actions now playing out. And Mark doesn't say things casually. He just doesn't, as I see it, he just doesn't make promises to people and not keep them. I think he's a man of action. And when he says something out loud like that, he believes it and he starts digging into it. And that just doesn't happen overnight. When he said, I'm just going to go kick ass in 2024, his world didn't magnify by 1,000% in a split second. What it does is it takes work. It takes an app and daily grind on an app, perhaps, to demonstrate to yourself that you're in the game, like Mark has been doing for the last 6 months. So I love the fact that we've got Mark talking about how to engage and kick ass. And probably one of the best examples that we've ever had on the collective of a guy who doesn't let anything stop him. And so his mental resilience is or maybe not so much his mental resilience, perhaps, but his why, I think, is what drives Mark a lot. And so now my flip to you, Neil, is there something in the app where a man would pick that up and think, what is my why?
Oh, that's interesting. That is really interesting. That's a really good question. I think that, within the app, we've tried to make it really outcome focused. Yeah. So what we learn by looking at other apps in this space, if you like, because, other people do meditation and stuff, or breath work or self-hypnosis. Yeah. There's an app called Breathwork. There's a hypnosis app called Reverie. There's plenty of meditation apps like Calm and Headspace. But in a way, I didn't want men to think, oh, I want to do meditation, or I want to do breathwork, or I want to do hypnosis. I thought men, and we found this out by interviewing a lot of them, what they want is the outcomes. Yeah. So, I want to be more successful. I want to stop being as angry. I want to have better relationships. I don't want to be anxious. I want to sleep better. So I think within the app, there's a whole series of smaller whys, about why you are there. And men go to things not because they want to, in my opinion, or in the majority, I'd say, from the men we've spoken to, not because they want to meditate, but because they want an outcome. Why? So they know why they're there. So they come for a why, I'd say, which might be, I want to sleep more. or I want to have better relationships, or I want to be less anxious. But I think through the practices within the app, such as meditation and breath work particularly, you develop a kind of mental fortitude and resilience, which could lead you to a greater why. It could help you find your purpose. And what it helped with me, I guess, is helps me stick with my purpose. I've got a very clear purpose in life now, which is to kind of help men have better mental health. Yeah. And I gave up everything to do it. I mean, I did the classic founder thing. I left a very high paying career and, impoverished the family, had to remortgage the house, all of that stuff. We're now not living the same lifestyle as we once were, and I've never been happier. I found my why. As Mark says, I've done all these things in my life, and it brought me to a certain place. And I got to that place. I realized I wasn't happy doing what I was doing, but it gave me a huge set of tools, which is an ability to bring people together and lead them on a journey, which I had been as a TV producer, whether making shows with Bear Grylls or, leading companies. It's kind of those leadership skills have come in really useful. Communication, being able to kind of sell an idea to people, all these kind of things. Well, that wisdom that I've collected over the years led me to this point. And then I was compelled to do something by a force bigger than myself. And I think that's quite an interesting topic, while not getting into kind of any of your your banned subjects such as religion. It's kind of but why do we do things? Why do we change our lives so radically? Is an interesting question. How do we find purpose? And why did you guys want to do 365 podcasts, like one every day of the year? It's kind of, you're driven to do it. You see something and then you've got to do it. Yeah. It's kind of, I'm really fascinated by that idea. And I hope that, some of the tools in there will help men have the space to kind of, to think about what their bigger purpose is, and have the resilience to kind of make change in their lives in a kind of a big way. That's a big dream. That'll be, that's a great dream.
Absolutely. Shaun, you got any other thoughts on this?
I do. It's something that you'd said earlier, Neil, towards the start of the show, and it's along the lines of, let's say it's a bunch of manly men, for lack of a better term, that should
Sure.
paint the picture. Now we're all sitting at the pub as manly men, and the reluctance to pick up something that is a warm blanket and a warm milk and honey drink. Speaking of which,
here's my son. He's just brought me in a cup of tea.
right.
Say hello,
Speaking of
Scott.
which, hey, how are you?
Thanks, man. You're live on TV in Canada.
Canada's better than America.
There you go. Canada's better than America.
Right. Speaking of warm soft drinks,
Yeah.
so
Sorry about that.
there's a bunch of hard men sitting down at the pub, and they're gonna be less interested in picking up an app that has sort of that woo-woo feel about
That's
it. It
right.
has a little bit of, softness feel to it. It's got a bit of a reputation as not being tough or hard.
Yeah.
That's an interesting barrier to entry. It's an interesting barrier to traction. And so
Absolutely.
I know you're aligned with Bear Grylls, as you said. I don't know anything about the relationship or other than what you've just said in this live. But I'm not even going to say I do feel, I do know based on experience that anything that can move the needle in a positive fashion for men it has better traction when someone before them who's got a reputation as not being a soft man, let's say has got a reputation as being a hard man, if they give it the nod, if they give it a, you know what, fellas, it's worth checking out, then every man at that table is less reluctant to pick up the app because they've been led to that position by someone who's giving it the nod. So how are you finding that?
So Sean, you got to come and work for us, man. I mean, like you just like nail every problem and ambition on the head. From crossing the beach, as you said earlier. Okay, so let me just unpack that. So, the three barriers to men using the tools that were already available, such as other meditation apps, were they saw them as too female, too hippie-ish, or that there was nothing wrong with them. Yeah. So those were the three barriers. We interviewed a couple hundred men, and those were the only three answers that came back. So too female, well, metal is just for men. So that takes away all those things that make men feel vulnerable. And the men who like to least feel vulnerable are the hardest men. Yeah. Yeah. So you've got to kind of, all right, in order to reach them, we've got to not make them feel vulnerable. We've got to make them feel safe. So you can't just give men the tools to look after their mental health. You have to give them the permission and the tools. It's just what you said, Sean. You get the nod from a hard man or whatever, So the barriers were too female. Okay, well, we're just for men. Yeah. So there you go. That's just taken away straight away. And actually, all the evidence shows, because we're working with Imperial College and been also working with the NHS, the research shows that gender-specific interventions were better for men. So there's a scientific reason to do it as well. Number two, too hippie-ish, to your point. Yeah, like I'm a complete hippie. I guess that I'm a sort of half hippie. So I love going to India and kind of sitting on a hill and all the rest of it. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and I love all the kind of the history of it, which does have a kind of spiritual nature, I guess. But men don't need that. You don't need that stuff for it to be effective. Yeah. What you need is just the tools themselves. So we've got rid of all of that. Yeah. So it's just really straight talking from men other men can relate to. Chibs, our meditation coach, in his own words, I'm a 6'7" black man from a council estate in London. When I talk, people tend to listen.
Dude, he's called Chibs.
Chibs.
I mean, you're always going to listen to someone called Chibs.
He's a tough guy. Yeah. He's a tough guy. Yeah,
Chibs
but he's
knows Tommy down the street.
He is a genuine tough guy. Yeah, but he's our meditation coach, and he's bloody brilliant. He's absolutely great, and people love him, and people really respond to him. And so you've got guys out there now saying, "I never thought I'd meditate, and then I started listening to Chibs. Now I do it every day." And that's the thing that where it's pretty cold here and miserable over the winter, and it's we're difficult times building a startup and building an app, and it is a big challenge to get traction and to get people who wouldn't normally use these things to use it. But when you hear stories like that, when you hear that feedback, you think, yeah, that's what we're doing it for. So yeah, that's how I see it. And that third objection, by the way, there's nothing wrong with me. We as men don't like to admit there's anything wrong with our mental health. Certainly not. We might have a gripe about dodgy knee or a shoulder or whatever, but it's kind of like we don't want to talk about mental health. And likewise, we don't, so that's why we're kind of marketing ourselves as a mental fitness app. Yeah, we want to be an aspirational tool, but we know from the science and the academic research that if you use the tools on the app, then actually your mental health is likely to improve. Can't say that for everyone, but across a group, people who would use the app compared to those who wouldn't, then across the group, there'll be better mental health outcomes. So it's all of those things, those barriers to entry that you have to remove in order to make men feel comfortable, because, the toughest men are arguably some of the most fragile as well, as I'm sure you guys can testify.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
agreed.
I have this question, I guess, thought, and it's for both of you guys, really, is that you guys are saying, the hardest man at the table, that, you're surrounded by your bunch of friends, and the person that everybody listens to is going to be who they envision to be the hardest man at the table kind of deal. And it's pretty prevalent in terms of men in general, because everybody I've talked to has the similar mindset. And I'm wondering, do you think it has to do with, the way we're raised as young boys and into men, in that we're constantly pushed to be, to put our emotions second, right? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, you're having a rough time. Sucks to be you.
That's right.
Deal with it, right?
Suck it up, man.
And that's the standard that has been for
Yeah.
many, many years. And it's required, I think, as men to be able to manage your own emotions and to be able to understand that, if you feel bad at this point in time, yep, good, feel bad, but still work. There's stuff to do, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm wondering, do you think that mindset needs to be adjusted, or do you think that it just needs to be shaped a little bit better so that as the younger generation that's coming up now, they're looking around for the hardest man at the table, like, okay, well, who do I listen to? And they see people like Bear Grylls, or they see people like Shaun, and they start to look up to them and say, oh, I really want to be like that.
Yeah.
But Shaun and Bear got to the point they are through all of the trials and tribulations that they went through
Absolutely.
previously, right? So
Yeah,
I'm wondering, what are you guys' thoughts on that? Neil, what do you think?
Well, so what I think we're seeing, so I think there's been, throughout history, there's been an imperative for men to be tough and to kind of, bottle up their emotions, and get on with things, because it was a survival instinct to start with. It helped to survive. We were the kind of guy, we had to go out, go back to caveman times, and we had to go out and hunt and protect and survive and kill. And we've evolved, but perhaps our emotions haven't evolved quite as quickly. Up until recently, arguably, the only allowable expression that a man of emotion that a man was supposed to express was anger. So a lot of men get often accused, if you like, of being angry, but behind it can be pain and inability to express oneself, which is conditioned into us through society. And I think that, what we know about the male suicide crisis, which is, much more extreme than with women, is that men, part of that is lack of communication, men not feeling they're able to show that vulnerability and to communicate. And so we do have to move on, because some men will literally take their problems to the grave rather than talk about them. That said, I think that what we're seeing is some of the toughest guys using their position as the hardest man in the room to try and change that dialogue. So, just to think of, well, Bear will, on every podcast or interview that he does, he'll talk about being vulnerable, about failing, about struggling. We've got an MMA fighter over here called Paddy the Baddy, who's very popular, and he will take his opportunity to say men need to talk. He's a tough guy. He destroys somebody in a ring, and straight afterwards he gives a talk about male mental health and saying how guys need to communicate better. Yeah, so he's just demonstrated his toughness, and then he's taking that opportunity. We've got a show over here about the SAS with a load of special forces guys in it, and which I think is in America now. I don't know whether it's come to Canada, but it's moved to Fox in America, and a lot of that is about their own vulnerability and dealing with PTSD and all the other kind of problems that come with being a tough man. So I think actually what we're seeing is some of those toughest guys out there are using their standing in society, as you say, those people we look to take the opportunity to say, guys, we've got to be a bit more open here, and I think that's a really interesting sea change, I would say.
Absolutely. Shaun, what are you thinking?
It is a sea change for sure. And it's quite a recent phenomenon, because if you go back like to the 70s as an example, there wasn't any dude that was sitting around talking about being vulnerable and transparent. Those two words weren't in the vocabulary.
No.
And so when I was coming up in the system, in the military, transparency and vulnerability was, you're considering it through the lens of the enemy is vulnerable, not me. And so I think that it is a new phenomenon that is starting to become a social observance where people can latch onto the idea that it's now a thing. Because 1 or 2 or 10 or 12 or 15 or 27 guys spread across the world who are quote unquote hard men are in positions of not authority, but are in positions of representation, I'll call it.
Yeah.
Those men are starting to get enough spotlight on them that there is a beachhead yet again of this mental health discussion. The guys that are sitting in the pub at the table may never have heard the word vulnerability or transparency or mental health ever.
Mm. Mm.
Ever. They may never have heard that ever until
No.
the right man sits down. And like the words could have been spinning all around them for years
Yeah.
prior,
Yeah.
but they never hear it until the right man sits down and at the right time says the right thing. And then bam, all of a
Yeah.
sudden that word becomes a word.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is now the word that they just heard for the first time, though they heard it 1,000 times in the past. They
Yeah.
never paid attention because the right guy at the right time saying the right thing is what opens their mind. And it's that open-mindedness to the change of an old way of doing things versus this new way of doing things, this new phenomenon of
Mm.
it's okay to be a tough guy and be vulnerable and transparent and talk about your failures and how you got to where you are through some sweat, blood, and freaking tears.
Yeah.
But not a lot of hard guys talk about these kind of things in a way that exposes their heart, exposes their spirit, exposes themselves to the greater world around them. Because there's nothing more powerful than being a silent knight in shining armor. There's nothing more powerful other than taking your freaking helmet off, putting it on the ground next to your shield and sword, leaning against the wall, and being vulnerable and transparent with people who you work with. There's nothing more powerful than that. But everyone, I think, distorts the idea of what is a powerful man, and it's the silent man.
Yeah.
It is the strong man with his back and his shoulders aligned properly so he's unapproachable.
Mm. Yeah.
And so I see the phenomenon changing. It's not
Yeah.
changing as fast as it needs to,
No.
but I think things like an app that will close the distance between the old thinking and the new thinking is what will move the needle to some degree. But again, who's delivering the message with the app has to be the right guy at the right time saying the right thing for it to start
Absolutely.
really exploding.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
That's what I mean about the permission. You've got to give men the permission and the tools to look after the mental health. And Sean, what you're talking about there is getting permission, being given permission by people that we look up to. We take our cues from.
That's a tough realm to enter into too, because you have when you're talking about permission, I agree with you. I just think that the word might be. I'm going to push back on the word permission a little bit
Yeah, sure.
because I don't think so much that we're looking for permission from somebody else. I think what we're looking for is seeing somebody else do it gives us the permission to give ourselves, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's
Oh
not
yeah,
so much that,
yeah. We're not getting permission from them.
Yeah.
You're totally right. You have to. Yeah, that's true. So maybe it's you need to give men the permission. Yeah, they need to give themselves the permission. But that's what I mean about removing barriers. So by removing those barriers, whether that's, in our case, 2 female, 2 hippie, nothing wrong with me. So we remove those barriers, and then they feel then you've that permission. They can give themselves permission to enter that space.
Absolutely. That way there's nothing stopping them, right? There's nothing in
No,
their way.
that's
Removing
right.
those barriers, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
You guys got any other thoughts on that? I got another video here that
I do. Just something that Neil had said
playbook.
real quick. He'd mentioned Huberman. I don't know if that was at the start of the show or we're chirping about Huberman in the green room.
Yeah.
But
No,
there's lots of podcasts out there that
Yeah.
are freaking awesome. I've been tracking Huberman since nobody knew about Huberman. I love that dude. But Huberman wasn't a thing until the right people started saying he was a thing.
Yeah.
Like He'd still be hanging out in his office in some basement, working with, I don't know, pouring vials of multicolored things into a beaker. I'm thinking he
That's what
wouldn't be in front
scientists
of.
do, yeah.
That's what they do. That's what they do. I think that he wouldn't be the guy that he is right now if the right people hadn't have got behind him and saying he's the guy to listen to right now. And
Yeah,
so that goes down to an app, or it goes down to anything. It goes down to
yeah,
just sitting at the table and the right guy saying the right thing at the right time. You Not many people will pay attention to good things unless someone says, this is a really good thing, you should check it out. But
yeah.
I don't I'm not gonna pay attention if it's someone that I don't know as I'm going through the grocery checkout, because there's no track record. And so why would a guy like, again, I don't know Bear Grylls personally at all. I don't know
Mm,
much about him, but why would people follow some of the things that Bear Grylls says? This is what I like to do. It's because he's got a track record of results. He's got a track record of extraordinary. And I
mhm.
think that a lot of men want to be more than just ordinary. They want to pursue a life of extraordinary. They want to be the adventurer within their own life. They want to be the hero in their own story. They want to think that they've slayed a dragon. They've got the damsel. They're they're the best character in the best movie of their entire life. And they're struggling
Yeah,
to find a way to be that, but they can identify it outside of their own external life. They can look at a guy like Bear Grylls and think, I, that's my guy. I'd love to be that guy. I want to
mm,
emulate his trajectory. And so I think it takes certain, not mentors, but lighthouses for some men to see the light way off on the horizon and think, that's the direction I'm heading. I think it takes strong, vulnerable men to demonstrate that you can be a strong, vulnerable man with something like an app.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's what we're trying to do.
I'm sure
Hopefully,
it
we're on
is.
the right track.
I really like the way you put that, Sean. And actually, I wrote down earlier being the hero, and it brought up this memory I have from being a kid. And I used to play um, baseball, and I would who did you what time period did you play within those little fantasy realms? It was never, the second inning with nobody out, no game on the line, just random inning throughout the game. You didn't fantasize about those moments. You fantasized about bottom of the ninth, two out. You're the last man up. It's up to you. The game is on the line and it's
Mhm.
on your shoulders. Same thing. You think about soccer. You're at the World Cup, right? The ball's on your foot. Penalty kick in the last minutes. Those are the moments that you fantasize about
Of
because
course.
as a young man, you are seeking, I think, that adulation. I think that's what we
Mm,
seek as young men. We the attention is our currency. So as a young man, you seek that attention. You're like, oh well, those moments that we see as children, they garner a lot of attention. So that's kind of where I want to be. You think about the knight in the shining armor, killing the dragon, saving the damsel that ends up into a parade and a wedding and all these things in mythology and fantasy style books. I think about the triumphs from the Roman generals when they would come back and have their triumph through the streets of Rome. Those moments as young men, I think, translate to adulthood. But as adults, we don't see that adulation except in certain people like Bear or like Sean or the heroes that we see do the what we would see as impossible for the everyday man.
mm,
If you get where I'm coming from on this, and I think it's a it's an interesting perspective to be able to look back at our childhood and say, oh well, that's why. Interesting. And I'm wondering, do you think that the app especially is going to help open those doors up for men to be able to see those things from 40,000 feet, to be able to look at their own childhood and say, oh, that's why I wanted to be able to do that. Oh, and give them those insights.
So I think maybe version 2, so what we've had to start with is version 1, which are just the practical tools. But once we build the community and we open up those conversations and we start to kind of look at more advanced tools, then absolutely. And just on that point about, it's something that you were saying about being the hero, and it's something about wanting to live the most of your life. So I'm 51 now. My dad died when he was 51. Yeah, and I've just been thinking about it a lot recently, because it's like, wow, what would it be like if I, without getting too morbid, if I died now, saying goodbye to my kids, all the things that he
I
had.
want that painting directly behind you. If you die right now, I want the red one in the top left corner. That one's mine.
Oh, that one.
Yeah. No,
Oh,
no,
that's
on
my
the
wife's.
wall directly behind you. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay.
Start
Not the
divvying up the
Beatles.
stuff right now.
Not
I
the
mean,
Beatles.
only if you die right now, though.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping I won't.
Yeah,
But the
me
point
too.
is, I was thinking of my own mortality a bit more, I guess, recently, because, I'm a similar age to my dad. I remember him dying. And there was something that Bear said, actually, and I wanted to tell and it's kind of like, our job is to kind of not, arrive at our grave in a kind of pristine condition, but to kind of come skidding into that hole covered in scars and bruises, saying, wow, what a ride. And I think that's kind of that transition from boyhood to manhood, that we all still want to live our lives to the full. We all still want to be the heroes of our story, I think, but in potentially a more adult way, which is kind of like, how do I use this part of my life to best effect, whether
Absolutely.
that's starting an app or doing a podcast every day for a year.
It was quite the challenge, but it was fun. Sean, you got any thoughts on
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I do. So when you're talking about as a young kid, you think that you're kicking the winning goal of the World Cup or something like this. Well, growing up in Barnsley, in fact, funnily enough, I just wrote this out about a couple of weeks ago. A good friend of mine, or a very good friend of mine, somehow Jedi mind tricked me into believing that I need to write a book with him. And so I believed him. And so that's what we're doing. And so I've written a chunk of my life from the day I was born until the day I was posted to my first infantry battalion. And so, as part of that writing, what precisely what I wrote about for a couple of paragraphs was, as a young boy, our household was really poor. We were in row housing, low rent row housing, just outside of Barnsley, and that kind of poor where if it's cold in winter, your dad sends you off to the colliery to steal coal in a coal bucket and then brings it back. Like now I'm that guy stealing coal. And so we didn't have radio, we didn't have TV. What I did have was an imagination, and I was outside a lot, and I'd just grab sticks and swing them around like it was a sword. And so over these couple of paragraphs of writing, I'm describing how my imagination was my tool at that time, slaying people that I had in my mind that were just imaginary figures of good versus evil, as it were. And so as a kid, I didn't have all the plastic toys that kids have nowadays. I just had sticks. And somehow I turned into a tier 1 special operator. And how did that happen? Was it because as a young child, my only distraction were sticks instead of a PS5 or a Nintendo or what have you? Is it because I was raised at a time where hard work was valued? Is it because of ... I don't know. We could tease all of the details out of my childhood versus Chance's childhood versus Neil's childhood and see if there's a pattern there that turned us into who we are. But here's my point. While I was out there as a 8-year-old swinging sticks around, slaying dragons in my mind, I might have not turned into anything. I might have been a shell of a man compared to who I am right now. But it's for me to decide. every freaking day I formed myself either knowingly or unknowingly. And I look back now and I'm 60. As I look back at my life, I see a lot of things that I just wasn't aware, I wasn't intentional in doing, but got me here. And I think that the message that I'd like to throw out to everyone out there on this subject is you don't have to have everything figured out. You just got to pay attention, but you don't have to have everything figured out. Because if you work hard enough, and by work hard enough, that shouldn't turn anyone off. I mean, just work a little bit harder than you are right now. If you work hard enough, things start appearing in front of your nose, results start occurring, patterns start forming, life starts getting a bit easier if you just get to work a little bit more with a little bit of intentionality. I wish someone would have told me as a 8-year-old, 12-year-old, 15-year-old that if you just keep your nose to the grindstone with a focus, you won't believe what's going to show up in your life. No one ever told me that. I'm almost like an accident. I sometimes feel that the things that I've accomplished or my results that I've achieved almost feel like accidents because I just didn't know what I was going to be doing 10 years later. I just did with a focus. I worked hard with intention in the day rather than believing that 4 careers from that moment I would be ... because I didn't know I would become what I would become many careers later. And so I think that speaking of young boys or young men, our imaginations can create all kinds of things in our mind. But at the end of the day, you've got to apply action to your imagination. You've got to apply work to your dream. The fantasy of slaying a dragon is awesome, but you can carry that fantasy with you right up until you're a 51-year-old man, that you're slaying dragons in your mind. But the real work is on the ground, directly in front of your nose with practical actions.
100%. Neil, you got any thoughts on that?
I'm just amazed that Sean's 60.
Me
I mean,
too. I didn't
you
think I'd
look,
make it past 30.
I mean, you're looking good. What's under the cap, Sean?
Long, long hair. Look at
I
that.
mean, look, you still.
Look
I
at
was
that.
just thinking, how grey is that hair going to be? He's still got brown hair.
I'm emulating John Wick. Freaking
It's-
Keanu Reeves, screw that guy. I'm gonna kick that guy's ass. I'm gonna last longer.
Looking good, man. You're doing something right. I'm going to
Yeah,
take your advice.
it's no accident. I've been talking about accidents, but I am a little intentional in what I do. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Neil, you got any thoughts on what Sean just said?
My kind of, I've had a wonderful life. Yeah, I've just, I've gone on to achieve things that I also would never have dreamt of, I suppose, as a kid, because they were out of my realm of knowledge, working in TV or something. I never met anyone who worked in television. I went on to become a really successful television producer, traveled the world and had a great time. And now I'm, having another career, which is also brilliant. And I think a lot of it happens more through luck than design, as you say, by accident. But my thing was always have a good time, do what you love, do what you're drawn to, do what you enjoy, and when you're there, give it everything. So I'm 100% on the work hard bit, but mine kind of was sort of, I was always on a voyage of discovery, I guess. I never kind of had that much of a plan, and by doing what I loved and working hard at whatever I loved, then things seem to turn out well for me, and I'm very thankful for that.
Absolutely. Now we are just about an hour here, so I'm gonna ask: are there any final thoughts? Anything still rattling around in the back of your head?
Dude,
Anything
you
at
got to
all?
do one more video. Just
One more
just
video?
a short
Okay.
one. Just a quick one. Neil
Okay.
will appreciate it.
I got
Yeah,
one
come
more.
on, let's
Okay.
have a look.
I got a
Bang it
bunch,
out.
but all right, here we go.
Things that's quite recent for me is changing the lens by which I view the world all the time and going to different angles to try to see the same problem. And you realize that you're not looking at the same thing at all.
Boom.
Okay.
Any thoughts on that right off the bat?
Reminds me of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which teaches you to see things from different viewpoints, as if you're literally standing. So you're looking at a problem. Like, let's say I've got an issue that I want to solve, and I think of it as myself, and then I come outside and I say, what would Shaun say if he saw Neil thinking about that thing? You know, what would Chance say if he saw Neil from a different angle trying to wrestle with that problem? You know, what would I, if I was looking at it from above, what would it look like? So I've done that exercise, and it's pretty effective of giving you different perspectives on any kind of situation, and that's what that video immediately reminded me of.
I like that. Shaun, thoughts?
Yeah, it's something that I say on a pretty regular basis, and it comes back from one of my earliest military qualifications as a reconnaissance patrolman, and that is you've got to cloverleaf the objective. You have to see a 360 on the problem. So you've got to stealth up, put eyes on the objective, stealth back, move around, stealth up, put eyes on the objective, work your way around the objective in a 360-degree fashion to fully understand what the problem is in front of your nose, where you're going to put your assault line, where you're going to put your all of the things. And so to me, it's imperative that I do a 360 on any substantial problem in front of me. But the add-on to that is also the velocity. So as I'm cloverleafing something, there's also another piece of the equation, and that is at what velocity. So if I've got a full day to 360 that thing, then there's a certain pace to me stealthing up, putting eyes on, and then stealthing back. But if I've only got 10 minutes, now there's a different velocity. So it's for me to control the velocity of how I do a 360 on something. If someone has allowed me enough time to carefully understand a problem, I'll look at it from a pile of different angles, and I'll also take that singular angle and I'll apply different velocities against it as I double or triple that 360 on the thing in front of me. So I like to apply angles, and I like to apply varying velocities on those angles to get a more complete picture.
I really like that. It's interesting because Neil, you've been talking about tools throughout the show, and the first podcast I started was called Tools for the Toolbox, and it was all about talking to other people who've been through things and the tools that they use to manage their life. And as you guys were talking about, this last section here was the fact that those tools, those extra viewpoints, those are extra. They're different ways to look at the same problem, right? If I'm struggling with my mental health, meditation is one way to look at it.
Yep.
Breath work is another way to look at it.
Yep.
Therapy is another way to look at it. Jiu-jitsu is another way to look at it. And I think
Absolutely.
that these, being able to utilize those tools in different ways on the same problem,
yes,
is the key. It's being able to jump from one, not just jump from one to the other, but utilize each one in its own aspect, which I think is really critical.
Absolutely. That's why we really wanted to provide a toolkit. We didn't want to just provide one type of solution. We want men to be able to choose, and by applying different tools to the same job. I'm sort of stretching a metaphor here, but it's kind of like you can build something bigger. Can have a more successful outcome. So we might have something around anxiety, as I was saying, but we'll have something breath work for anxiety, meditation for anxiety, and hypnosis for anxiety, and they all do different jobs, but different approaches to the same problem. If you apply as many tools as you can to those problems, then now you've got a better chance of success.
Absolutely. I was explaining it to a friend of mine that you can use a wrench to drive a nail. You can.
Yeah.
It'll work, sure. Is it the right tool for the job though? So the reason you have a hammer, there's a reason you have 7 different types of hammers. There's a reason you have a bunch of different types of wrenches. There's a reason you have all these things. Is that everything has a specific use, but that also doesn't mean that you can't use them for other things.
But there's also that phrase, isn't there? If you've only got a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
And before the hammer existed, I believe it was just caveman picked up a rock and used the rock in a variety of different ways as well. So,
Absolutely.
if you've got next to nothing, there's always a way to figure things out.
Yeah.
100%. I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Are there any final thoughts on anything that we've gone over? Anything at all that's still rattling around in the back of your brain there, Neil?
No, I just how much I've enjoyed hanging out with you guys for an hour. You guys are ace, and you keep doing what you're doing. It's inspiring. It's brilliant. I've loved it. It's
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
fresh. It's
Been
fresh, man.
super fun hanging out with you.
It's
Don't get me
fresh.
wrong. Sean, you got any final thoughts?
I do. Just it's been rattling around in the back of my head ever since Neil started introducing the idea of Mettle, the Mettle app, Mettle app. There you go. There's your plug, Neil. I'm not
Thanks.
not even a plug guy. I mean, I
No,
don't plug things.
He's learning.
Sure.
I'm getting better. I'm doing my
It's our
best.
countrymen because we're countrymen.
That's
That's
right. That's right. It's because
You want to help me out?
you're owing me a pint after this, is what I'm thinking.
So it's
here's-
8:30 here. I mean, it's time.
That's
It's time for.
we'll make it happen. So here's what I'm thinking. Neil has been talking about, Mettle, the Mettle app, and what I've actually removed a word in there, not Mettle, but test your metal. And I'm sure that Neil has used this phrase in the past, of course. But for me and the table that I sit at, test your metal is what works, not Mettle. Because the guys that I hang out with, they like a good freaking challenge, man. And when I say to someone, test your metal, rather than, oh, dude, Mettle, it's like now it's a challenge. Now I'm throwing the gauntlet down. Now I'm throwing down the metal glove that they either pick up and put on and smash the problem with, or they shrug their shoulders and say, dude, I am metal. No, test your metal, man. And so rather than just be it, test it. Test yourself. Rather than just be yourself, test yourself every day. So my takeaway that's been scratching the back of my brain for the last hour is test your metal.
All right, I'll change my marketing campaign.
Oh, dude, don't change a thing. I'm just saying it's just a stupid little scratch in the back of my head.
No, I love it. You're totally right. It's something we're playing with, and it's something that we've discussed as a kind of a test your metal, something that will be in the app. We're not quite sure what that will be yet, but yeah, that's some test your metal. Yeah, we've all got to, life is a test of your metal, which is why we're trying to provide tools.
Yeah, good man.
Absolutely. It's funny that you guys mentioned that because what I titled this episode was Test Your Metal. So
Excellent.
It works out perfectly. But yeah, I do appreciate the convo, Neil. It has been fantastic. I'm looking forward to taking a look at the app and seeing how that all plays out. The conversation has been awesome, and I don't have a whole lot to add because I think we covered pretty much everything that I was thinking. So I will end it with the way I always end it. Learn, build, grow. We'll see y'all next time. Chimo.
Thank you.